Would you comment a little bit? You mentioned term limits on the national level. Recently, Teddy Kennedy, John Murtha, and Robert Byrd all passed away in office. May they rest in peace. What would it take? The Congress is not going to do it. What would it take nationwide? We have term limits here in Arkansas, and I think that serves the state very well. We have term limits for the president. What would it take for a national program to have term limits for the Congress and the Senate?
Boy, it's a great question, and it's a problem that I've thought about a long time, and I don't have a great answer. But I think we will end up with term limits. And I look at term limits as that kind of canary in the coal mine. When we get term limits, we will know we have retaken our government. Right. And as long as a fundamental issue like that, they used to call term limits a fad. And it used to just bug me because, of course, Aristotle talked about term limits. At the very beginnings of democracy, they realized, Aristotle used to say that you should rule and be ruled in turn. Meaning that you don't, even where you democratically hand somebody power, you don't want them to hold it forever. You want a date certain where that power has to be returned. So it's, this is something that not only has 80+% support now, but it had that support 10 years ago. It had that support 20 years ago, and the truth is, you can go back to polling all the way into the 50s and 40s, and there was support for term limits. This is a tradition in our country, so as long as we don't have it, it is a sign to us that there's a problem, that we don't have a representative government. That representative is a euphemism for unrepresentative. So I think there's that. My view is that we have a battle against the federal government. And the problem we have in fighting the federal government is that they have bought off two of our biggest allies, the state governments and the local governments.
Yeah. Right.
Our state and local officials are on the take to the federal government. We have a system in which our taxes are being taken by the politicians furthest away from us and then used to buy off the politicians closer to us. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when they decide, well, what should we cut? There's a downturn in the economy, what do we cut? Well, they keep something that seems silly, because to cut it, they'd lose $9, for every $1 they cut, they'd lose $9 in federal funds. So decisions being made at the local level are being dictated more by Washington than by the people in that local area. And in fact, oftentimes the politicians, this is not just some amorphous thing, they understand darn good and well and want to talk to the folks in Washington to make the decision, not the folks in the hometown. So I think what's going to happen is that we're going to have to take control of our state and local governments. We need things like term limits. We need all kinds of other reforms too. We need initiative referendum at every level. There have been a lot of local communities here in Arkansas who have passed term limits, and there's some legal question whether they can do that because of the state constitution. Same thing's true in Florida, where they passed all of these term limits at the county level, and several of them have been challenged and thrown out because they don't have the ability in their state constitution to do that. We've got to get engaged at the state and local level, and frankly, it's not like we shouldn't be doing something at the national level. We should. But I like the types of things that you're doing. Suing at the state level against Obamacare is a smart way to go after it. Trying to somehow pretend that we're going to turn around the federal government overnight, that's not going to happen. But I think by using our strength at the state and local level, we can begin to turn around the federal government. And I think if we can get control of the state and local governments, we're going to find the ability to either change the federal government, or the chasm between state and local governments and the federal government is going to become so great that something has to give. And when we have all these term limits and initiative rights and a functioning state and local government, I think it's going to be a short time before we'll be able to get a handle on the federal government. I think any direct assault on Washington. You know, the problem we had in the 90s was that not only were the Democrats 100% opposed, just about 100% opposed to term limits, but the Republicans wanted it as a campaign issue. They didn't want it as a matter of public policy.
Absolutely.
And when I say Republicans, I don't mean the Republican walk in their precinct. They wanted term limits.
Yeah.
The Republican rank and file wanted term limits. Frankly, the Democrats rank and file wanted term limits, but the elected officials. So I don't have a great, quick way to get there, but I'll tell you what, I do see it as the issue that tells us whether or not we are in control of our federal government. And today, I think that answer is clearly no. We're not in control.
Right. And let me tell you all what Secure Arkansas is doing right now, since you brought up the local government. We are recruiting JPs, Justice of the Peace, and aldermen, because in your local community, we need to be attending these quorum courts and city councils. It's very important. They pass all kinds of laws before it ever gets to the Capitol, because with Secure Arkansas, when we worked the last legislative session, I mean, if you ever go to testify before a committee, it's almost always too late. It's almost always too late. So that's why we have got to get to our city councils and quorum courts. And we're recruiting aldermen and justice of the peace now as we speak. And they have to file, I think, the first part of August, sometime during there. So if you've got friends, relatives that you feel like that might work in that slot, please, by all means, because we're going to really campaign. Secure Arkansas is going to campaign very hard at a local level. Now, keep in mind, Secure Arkansas is a ballot question committee, but we are a PAC, and right now we're on the ballot question committee right now, because that's our treasurer. And I'm telling, and when you work with the Arkansas Ethics Commission, you have to be very meticulous, and she is. So we're fixing to go there, but it's very important that you talk to people, and let's get more JP and aldermen recruited so we can take back our local government.